I'm going to tell you something that most people will never have the courage to tell you. It might make you uncomfortable at first, but if you allow it to settle deep into your spirit, it will change the way you see the rest of your life. You see, the world has taught us to believe that growing older means slowing down, becoming irrelevant, and quietly stepping aside so the next generation can shine. But that, my friend, is a lie that has robbed countless men and women of their greatest years. Because the truth is this: the most powerful transformation of your life doesn't happen when you're young, restless, and chasing everything that glitters. No, it happens when you reach that sacred season where you finally recognize that your time, your energy, and your presence are far too valuable to waste on things that no longer serve your purpose. At this stage of your life, your greatest assignment is not to do more. It is to be more, to be still, to be wise, to be silent. I know that sounds strange in a world that glorifies noise, but silence is not surrender. Silence is strategy. It is power under control. It is choosing peace over chaos, understanding over reaction. You've spent years pouring yourself out for others, for family, for friends, for people who often didn't even notice the sacrifice. But now, you must learn the holy art of turning inward, not because you've stopped loving others, but because you've learned to love yourself enough to protect your spirit. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And many people, especially in their later years, are trying to give from a place of exhaustion. They are running on the last drops of energy, still trying to please people who wouldn't even think twice if the roles were reversed. But hear me, you have earned the right to protect your peace. You have earned the right to say no without explanation, to walk away without guilt, and to choose yourself without apology. Because peace is not a luxury, it is a necessity for purpose. Think about it. How many years have you spent explaining yourself to people who never really wanted to understand you? How many times have you tried to prove your worth to those who had already decided you weren't enough? And what did it give you? Did they suddenly value your presence? Did they finally see your sacrifice? Or did they just keep taking, draining your joy, your strength, and your spirit until there was nothing left to give? I've seen people grow old still fighting the same battles they fought in their youth, still chasing validation, still longing for approval, still trying to earn the love that should have been freely given. And do you know what happens to them? They die tired, bitter, and confused, wondering why life never gave them peace. But life was offering them peace all along. They just never learned to stop talking long enough to receive it. You see, silence is not weakness, it is wisdom. In a world that is constantly demanding your opinion, your reaction, your defense, silence becomes your protection. When you stop explaining, you stop giving people ammunition. When you stop defending, you stop fighting battles that were never yours to fight. When you stop trying to make everyone understand you, you set yourself free from the prison of their opinions. Every word you speak carries energy. Every explanation drains power. And too often, you are giving that power to people who do not value it, who twist it, who use it against you. I once believed that if I just communicated better, if I explained my heart clearly enough, if I found the perfect words, everything would be resolved. But I learned something powerful. Peace does not come from being understood. Peace comes from understanding yourself and being silent enough to hear the voice of God guiding you. So in your later years, stop chasing approval. Stop explaining. Stop defending. Protect your peace. Preserve your energy and walk in quiet strength. Because when you learn to be still, you don't lose power, you gain it. And in that silence, you'll discover something sacred, that the most powerful sound in your life is not your voice trying to be heard, it's your spirit finally being at peace. But I was wrong. Not everyone is looking for peace. Not everyone desires understanding. There are people who feed on confusion, who breathe the drama like it's oxygen. They thrive on chaos because it gives them a sense of control. They pull you into their dysfunction, not because they need help, but because your attention gives them life. It makes them feel significant, powerful, relevant. And the moment you realize this, the moment you finally understand that your words, your efforts, your energy are being wasted on people who have no desire to change, that's the moment you begin to reclaim your peace and your power. Your later years are not the time to keep fighting for understanding. They are not the time to prove your worth or explain your decisions. These are the years of harvest, the years to reap from the wisdom you've sown, to enjoy the fruit of your labor, and to live on your own terms without guilt, without noise, without apology. But here's where the challenge lies. You've spent a lifetime being programmed to put others first. From childhood, you were taught to be polite, to please people, to consider everyone's feelings before your own. You were told that being good meant being selfless, accommodating, always available. And society reinforced this lie, teaching you that your value was tied to how much you could give, how much you could endure, and how much you could sacrifice, even if it meant losing yourself in the process. But now, I'm asking you to do something radical. I'm asking you to deprogram yourself, to question everything you've been told about what it means to be a good person. Who said you have to answer every call? Who said you must attend every event just to keep the peace? Who said you must maintain relationships that drain the very life out of you simply because of shared blood or shared memories? Who made these rules? And more importantly, why are you still following them? The truth is uncomfortable, but liberating. You're following them because of fear. You're afraid of being labeled selfish. You're afraid of being misunderstood. You're afraid that if you stop giving, stop doing, stop performing, you'll be forgotten. That if you stop being useful, you'll no longer be loved. But here's the truth. If the only reason people keep you around is because of what you do for them, then you are not in relationships, you are in transactions. And transactions will never satisfy your soul. They can never give you the love, the respect, the connection your heart longs for. They only keep you busy, distracted, trapped in cycles of pleasing others while neglecting yourself. You see, focusing on yourself is not selfish, it's sacred. It's not about bubble baths or comfort alone. It's about confrontation. Confronting the truth about who you are when there's no audience to impress, no role to play, no task to complete. It's about asking yourself the questions most people spend a lifetime avoiding. Who am I beyond what I do for others? What do I really want from the years I have left? What dreams did I abandon because someone told me they were foolish? What parts of me did I bury because they didn't fit the image others had of me? Most people never ask these questions. They stay busy because stillness is too revealing. They stay needed because solitude feels too empty. They stay involved in other people's chaos because silence forces them to face themselves. But hear me, the fear of being alone is worse than the reality of it. Because once you pass through that fear, you'll find freedom, real, glorious freedom. It's the freedom to wake up each morning and ask not, what does the world need from me? But what does my soul need today? It's the freedom to live, to breathe, to choose, to exist, not out of obligation, but out of alignment. And that, my friend, is the beauty of growing older with wisdom. It's not about retreating from life. It's about finally living it fully and freely on your own divine terms, to learn something new simply because it stirs your curiosity, to spend hours doing something that serves no practical purpose except to make your heart come alive again. That, my friend, is freedom. The kind of freedom that comes when you finally understand that joy itself is a purpose. It's the freedom to look at your calendar and see empty space not as a void to be filled, but as sacred ground to be protected, Time that belongs entirely to you and no one else. But understand this, the world will resist this new version of you. The moment you start focusing on yourself, when you choose silence over reaction, when you begin setting boundaries without explanation, people will push back. They will call you cold. They will say you've changed, and not in a good way. They'll accuse you of being selfish, of forgetting your roots, of abandoning your responsibilities. Why? Because your growth disrupts their comfort. Your peace exposes their chaos. Your silence removes their control. And this is where your silence becomes your strongest weapon. Because the moment you start explaining yourself, the moment you begin to justify your decisions, you've already surrendered your power. You've given them room to argue, to negotiate, to guilt trip you back into your old role, the role of the one who was always available, always accommodating, always self-sacrificing. But when you stay silent, when you smile gently and change the subject, when you refuse to be pulled back into a conversation that serves no purpose other than to shame you for protecting your peace, that's when you win. You're not being rude. You're not being unkind. You're simply choosing to no longer participate in your own depletion. And something remarkable begins to happen. Over time, people will adjust. Some will distance themselves, and that's perfectly fine, because they were never meant to walk with you in this new chapter anyway. Others will begin to respect your boundaries. They'll learn that you're no longer available for drama, for manipulation, for meaningless talk. And a few, a precious few, will see what you're doing and be inspired by it. They'll recognize the courage it takes to step back and protect your peace. And they'll find the strength to do it in their own lives too. You must understand this. Your later years are not a waiting room. You're not sitting around waiting for the end to come. You're not here just to exist while counting down the days. These years are the richest, most authentic, and potentially the most fulfilling years of your entire life. If you have the courage to make some uncomfortable choices, and the first of those choices is this: accept that you don't owe anyone anything. Not your time, not your energy, not your constant presence, not your endless participation in things that drain your spirit. You've already paid your dues. You've already served, given, sacrificed, and carried. Now it's time to collect your reward. And your reward is freedom, the freedom to live by your own values, to honor your own desires, to create your own definition of a meaningful life. But remember, freedom comes with responsibility. The responsibility to know yourself deeply enough to make wise decisions. The responsibility to be honest about what truly matters to you, not what others have convinced you should matter. The responsibility to face your fears instead of hiding behind business. The responsibility to stop blaming others for your circumstances and take ownership of how you spend your remaining time on this earth. Because that's what we're really talking about. Time. The most precious, most limited resource you possess. You can make more money. You can meet new people. You can gain new skills. But you can never make more time. Once it's gone forever. Every minute you waste on activities that don't nourish you, every hour you give to people who don't value you, every day you spend trying to fix what was never yours to fix. That's time you will never get back. So I want you to imagine something with me for a moment. Imagine for a moment that you're standing at the end of your life, looking back at the very years we're talking about right now. What do you want to see? Do you want to see a version of yourself still trapped in the same old battles, still trying to win the approval of people who were never going to give it, still sacrificing your peace for those who took it for granted? Or do you want to look back and see someone who finally chose freedom? Someone who lived with peace, authenticity, and joy without apology or explanation? The choice, my friend, is yours. But understand this, you can't have both. You cannot cling to old habits and expect a new life. You cannot keep engaging with dysfunction and expect to find peace. You cannot keep explaining yourself to people who refuse to understand and expect to feel empowered. Something has to change. And that something is you. Not because you're broken, not because you failed, but because the version of you that brought you this far cannot take you where you are destined to go next. That version of you was built for survival, for proving your love, for earning love, for holding everything together. But now, you are no longer called to survive. You are called to thrive. You don't need to earn love anymore. You need to give it to yourself. You don't need to prove your worth anymore. You need to know it deep in your spirit without needing anyone to confirm it. And the road to that transformation is paved with silence, self-sufficiency, and spiritual maturity. Now, when I talk about silence, I'm not talking about isolation. I'm not asking you to withdraw from the world or cut off everyone around you. I'm talking about intentional silence, being selective with your words, purposeful with your communication, discerning with what you share and with whom you share it. There is a difference between suppressive silence and sacred silence. Suppressive silence comes from fear, from feeling that your voice doesn't matter, from being shut down too many times until you simply stop speaking. But sacred silence, the kind I'm talking about, comes from power. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the understanding that your words carry weight, that your voice has value, and that not everyone deserves access to it. Think about the most powerful people you've ever encountered. They weren't the loudest. They weren't the ones constantly trying to prove a point. They carried an authority that didn't need to shout. They understood the divine principle that less is more. When they spoke, people listened. Not because they demanded attention, but because they spoke from a place of clarity and conviction. One word from a wise person can shift an atmosphere more than an hour-long speech from a fool. One moment of meaningful silence can communicate more than 1,000 explanations ever could. Because true power doesn't need to announce itself. It simply is. But to walk in that kind of presence, that grounded, calm, unshakable presence, you must first build a relationship with yourself. And for many people, that relationship doesn't exist. You know how to be everything to everyone else. You know how to play the roles life assigned you. The parent, the spouse, the friend, the provider, the peacemaker. But do you know how to simply be you? Do you know what you think outside of what others have told you to think? Do you know what you love apart from what others expect you to love? Do you know what truly matters to you beyond what your culture, your family, or your environment taught you to value? These are not easy questions. They are confronting. They shake the foundations of who you thought you were. And the answers don't come overnight. They come through reflection, through stillness, through the courage to sit in silence long enough to hear the truth about yourself. Some of what you discover will surprise you. You may find that much of your life has been shaped by beliefs you never actually chose, values you inherited, roles you accepted, expectations you carried because someone else convinced you they were right. But as you uncover who you truly are, you begin to see that silence is not just the absence of noise, it's the presence of clarity. It's in that quiet space that you begin to remember yourself, and that's where transformation begins. You might begin to realize that some of the relationships you once believed were essential to your identity are actually the very ones holding you back. You might discover that the life you've built, the routines, the commitments, even the successes, while admirable, are not the life your soul truly desires. And that's where the real challenge begins. Having the courage to make changes at a stage in life when most people have accepted that change is no longer possible. But let me tell you a truth that very few people believe change is always possible. Your mind doesn't grow old. Only your habits do. The brain never stops learning, never stops adapting, never stops creating new pathways. The body may slow down, but the spirit remains ageless. And the wisdom you've gathered over the years gives you a divine advantage. You no longer operate from the restless enthusiasm of youth or the desperate need for validation. You move from a place of clarity, from understanding, from knowing what works and what doesn't. That's the maturity that turns experience into power. So when I tell you to focus on yourself, I'm not telling you to become selfish or self-centered. I'm inviting you to finally give yourself the same love, care, and attention you've been giving to everyone else for decades. I'm asking you to treat yourself like you matter, because you do. To invest in your own growth, your own peace, your own joy, with the same passion you've invested in others. To fill your own cup without guilt, without apology, and without constantly checking to see who approves. Because the truth is, most people aren't thinking about you as much as you think they are. They're too busy thinking about themselves, their problems, their insecurities, their own struggles. The judgment you fear, the criticism you anticipate, the rejection you try so hard to avoid, most of it exists only in your imagination. And the little that does exist in reality, it matters far less than you believe. Someone else's opinion of you is none of your business. Let me say that again, so it sinks deep into your spirit. Someone else's opinion of you is none of your business. Their thoughts about you, their feelings about your choices, their discomfort with your boundaries, those are their issues to manage, not yours. You were never called to control people's perceptions of you. You were called to live in truth. You can be the kindest, most generous, most well-intentioned person in the world, and someone will still misunderstand you. You can give your all, live by everyone else's expectations, and someone will still be disappointed. So if you can't please everyone, and you never will, why not at least please yourself? Why not choose authenticity over performance, peace over approval, truth over pretense? The energy you've been wasting trying to manage how others see you could be redirected toward building a life that you actually love. Think about that for a moment. All the mental effort you've spent rehearsing explanations, overthinking your words, avoiding conflict, second, guessing your boundaries. That's precious energy that could be used for creation, not defense. You could use that same energy to learn, to grow, to explore, to live. You could spend it developing new skills, deepening your understanding of the world, pursuing what fascinates you, or simply enjoying the stillness of the present moment without the noise of other people's expectations echoing in your mind. Because the truth is this, the quality of your life is directly connected to the quality of your thoughts. If your mind is filled with worry about what others think, if you're constantly explaining yourself, defending yourself, proving yourself, then you're living in a mental prison of your own making. But the door to that prison has been open all along. You only need the courage to walk through it. And walking through that door means making peace with the reality that not everyone will understand your transformation. Your children might say you've changed when you stop saying yes to every request. Your siblings might think you're abandoning them when you stop showing up to every family gathering. People may not recognize this new version of you, and that's okay, because you're not living for recognition anymore. You're living for peace. Your old friends might begin to think you've changed. They might say you've become distant or even boring simply because you're no longer interested in the same conversations, the same empty habits, the same meaningless cycles. But that discomfort is not your burden to carry. Their confusion is not your problem to solve. You were not created to make everyone comfortable with your growth. Your assignment is to grow. Your purpose is to evolve. Your calling is to become the fullest, truest, most authentic expression of who God designed you to be. in the precious time you have left. And if your transformation unsettles others, then that discomfort is a mirror for them, not a mistake in you. This is where silence becomes a divine strategy. Silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the tool of those who no longer waste energy explaining what God has already made clear. When someone challenges your new boundaries, your instinct may be to explain, to justify, to make them understand why you're choosing differently. But explanation invites argument, and argument keeps you trapped in the same old cycle. Instead, learn the strength of stillness. Say calmly, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not available for that. And let your silence do the rest. Don't fill the space. Don't rush to make them comfortable. The silence that follows will reveal everything you need to know. In that silence, people show their hearts. They reveal whether they respect your growth or resent it, whether they honor your boundaries or only valued your compliance. And that, my friend, tells you all you need to know about whether this relationship still deserves space in your life. Because relationships that cannot survive your boundaries were never truly relationships. They were arrangements built on your self-abandonment. This is one of the hardest truths you'll ever have to embrace. Not every relationship is meant to last forever. We were taught that love means endurance at all costs, that loyalty means staying no matter the price, that commitment means losing yourself for the sake of peace. But that's not loyalty, that's bondage. There is a holy difference between compromise and surrendering your identity. Healthy compromise happens when two people honor each other's needs and grow together. But self-abandonment is when you consistently sacrifice your peace, your time, and your well-being just to keep others happy. That's not love, that's imbalance. So when you begin to set new boundaries, don't be surprised if it shakes the ground. To those who've grown comfortable with your silence, your no will sound like rebellion. To those who've benefited from your lack of boundaries, your self-respect will feel like betrayal. But remember this, their reaction is not a reflection of your wrongness. It's evidence of how much they depended on your compliance. You are not responsible for their emotions about your growth. You are not responsible for guiding them through their discomfort. You are not responsible for making this easy for them. Your only responsibility is to your own peace, your purpose, and your alignment with God's will for your life. And if they cannot handle the version of you that finally values yourself, if they resist relating to you as a whole person with your own needs, rather than a background character in their story, believe what their behavior shows you. Don't explain it away. Don't make excuses. Don't tell yourself that they'll change if you just give them more time. Growth exposes truth, and truth always separates what's real from what's convenient. Sometimes acting accordingly means limiting contact. It means ending conversations that drain you. It means declining invitations that no longer align with your peace. And yes, sometimes it means walking away from relationships that cannot grow with you. I know that sounds difficult. I know it challenges everything you've been taught about loyalty, family, and friendship. But let me tell you something, loyalty was never meant to be one-sided. Commitment was never meant to cost you your soul. True love, godly love, does not demand that you lose yourself to prove it. You can love people deeply and still choose distance. You can wish someone well without walking beside them. You can pray for their peace without sacrificing your own. These are not contradictions. They are the marks of maturity. They are the quiet wisdom of a person who understands that peace is not found in pleasing everyone. It's found in honoring who God called you to be. There comes a time in life when maturity teaches you the art of duality. The ability to appreciate someone's good qualities while also acknowledging that their chapter in your story has ended. That's wisdom. But not everyone is ready for that kind of wisdom because it demands courage. Most people would rather remain in familiar pain than risk unfamiliar peace. They hold on to dysfunction because at least it's predictable. They complain about their circumstances, yet fear the responsibility that comes with change. They stay in draining relationships, not because love remains, but because loneliness feels scarier than misery. And if that's where you find yourself today, don't condemn yourself. I understand it. Change is frightening, especially when your entire identity has been built around roles that no longer serve you: parent, partner, peacekeeper, provider. Letting go of that identity can feel like death. But what you're really facing is not the death of you. It's the death of who you pretended to be. And hear me, death is not the end. In God's divine order, death is transformation. It is the necessary doorway to rebirth. You cannot step into who you are destined to become while still clinging to who you used to be. You cannot walk in new authority while holding on to old insecurity. The powerless version of yourself, the one who said yes when you wanted to say no, who smiled through discomfort, who lived to please everyone else, that version had a purpose. It was your survival self. It helped you navigate seasons when you didn't yet know your worth. But now you've grown. You have strength now. You have understanding now. You have wisdom now. You are no longer the person who needs to beg for belonging. You are a person who can stand alone, and standing alone does not mean being lonely. Loneliness and solitude are not the same. Loneliness is being surrounded by people and still feeling unseen. It's the H of being misunderstood even when you're doing everything to connect. Solitude, on the other hand, is sacred. It's choosing to be alone, not because you're empty, but because you're full enough to need space to think, to breathe, to rediscover your own voice. Solitude is where transformation begins. It's where God whispers what the noise of the world has drowned out. It's where your heart recalibrates, your spirit recharges, and your mind becomes clear enough to see what truly matters. But our culture fears solitude. We've been conditioned to believe that being alone means something's wrong with you, that you've failed in life, that you're unlovable, that you lack connection. So people fill their lives with noise, endless conversations, constant scrolling, meaningless obligations, anything to avoid hearing their own truth. But make no mistake, that's not living. That's spiritual suffocation. The discomfort of solitude is temporary, but the pain of self-abandonment lasts a lifetime. The awkwardness of facing yourself fades. The regret of never truly living, that stays until your final breath. So how do you begin to shift? How do you start reclaiming yourself when your entire life has been structured to distract you from you? You start small. Transformation doesn't require drama, it requires decision. You don't have to announce your growth to anyone. You don't have to explain your silence. You don't have to burn bridges. Just stop walking across them so often. Change begins in small, deliberate choices. Start by observing. Pay attention to where your time and energy go this week. Notice what gives you peace and what drains it. Notice the people who uplift you versus the ones who leave you heavy. Notice which conversations make your soul expand and which make it shrink. Don't judge, just observe. Because awareness is the foundation of transformation. Once you become aware, you begin to choose differently. You begin to live consciously. And that, my friend, is where your true rebirth begins, not in noise, not in performance, but in quiet, deliberate awareness of who you are becoming. Maybe this is the season when you finally decide you're no longer available to be everyone's emotional caretaker. Maybe you decide that those long phone calls, the ones where you spend hours listening, comforting, and counseling, only to hang up feeling drained, are no longer part of your assignment. You don't have to end the friendship. You simply redefine it. You create healthy boundaries that honor both your time and your energy. So when they call, you give them 20 minutes, you listen with grace, And then you say, I have something I need to do. You don't explain what that something is. You don't apologize for taking your time back. You simply hold the line. And if that small boundary causes offense, then that offense reveals something important. It tells you what the relationship was built on. Because love and respect can coexist with boundaries, dependency cannot. Maybe you decide to dedicate one morning a week entirely to yourself, not to be productive, not to achieve, but simply to be. Maybe you sit quietly in a cafe with a book. Maybe you take a slow walk through the park, listening to your thoughts instead of the world's noise. Maybe you paint, write, garden, or simply sit in silence watching the sunrise. Whatever it is, do it for no reason other than it brings you joy. You've spent years giving your time away as if it didn't belong to you. But time is your most sacred gift, and you have the right, no, the responsibility to spend it in ways that restore your soul. Stop waiting for someone to give you permission to rest, to breathe, to exist for yourself. That permission will never come from others. It must come from you. The key to your freedom is already in your hand. You just have to turn it. Maybe you decide to practice silence, not as withdrawal, but as wisdom. When your adult children begin to share their struggles, you listen without jumping into rescue mode. You no longer try to fix what isn't yours to fix. For years, you've carried the weight of their lives on your shoulders. But now you understand they are grown. They are capable. They are responsible for their own choices. Your role is no longer to save them, but to believe in them. When they come to you venting, you simply say, that sounds difficult. And you stop there. You listen. You empathize. But you no longer take their pain home with you. You no longer lie awake worrying about what you cannot control. That's not abandonment. That's love matured. Because love without boundaries is not love. It's exhaustion. And when you stop trying to manage their emotions, you reclaim the energy to manage your own. Or maybe, just maybe, you decide that you will no longer participate in family drama. Every family has it. The old wounds, the unspoken resentments, the recycled arguments that have been rehearsed for years. Perhaps you've been the peacekeeper, the referee, the one who holds everything together. But what if you just stopped? What if the next time someone tries to drag you into conflict, you simply say, I'm staying out of this one, and mean it? What if you stopped explaining one person to another, stop trying to make peace between people who have no desire to reconcile? That's not cruelty. That's clarity. Because it is not your job to manage other people's relationships with each other. It is not your responsibility to maintain family harmony at the cost of your own peace. Dr. Myles Munroe once said, you were not born to maintain what's broken. You were born to create what's new. That's what boundaries do. They create the space for new peace, new energy, new purpose. This is how maturity speaks, not with noise, not with explanations, but with quiet decisions that say, I am finally choosing me.